Wellness is having its moment. More than ever before, it seems that there is a large-scale interest in how we can improve our health and wellness. From books and podcasts to run clubs and Pilates studios to Oura rings and other wearable trackers, wellness is definitely on our collective mind. It is prominent in our cultural zeitgeist at the moment. As much as I hate to say it, as someone who is a part of the wellness space, wellness is definitely trending. According to statistics published by the Global Wellness Institute, the wellness economy has doubled in size since 2013 and reached a new height of $6.8 trillion in 2024. And this growth doesn't stop there. The wellness economy is projected to continue to grow annually by 7.6% and is projected to reach $9.8 trillion over the next 5 years. This economic growth reflects the increase in interest in health-related products, services, and content. So essentially, there is a lot of success and or money to be had in the wellness space right now. This is why you have likely seen an influx of influencers in the wellness space posting about a product that you absolutely have to try, why every podcast that you listen to seems to be littered with ads for greens powders and protein powders and supplements and vitamins and all of the things. This is likely why you have also seen things like skincare brands promoting their 10-step skincare routine, which is all sold separately, by the way, with words like regulating, reset, self-care, things of that nature. And if you've been in the wellness space long enough, you've definitely likely also seen coaches with 4-figure courses that tell you that they can help heal your inner child with somewhat questionable training and education. Because wellness is so profitable right now and has been for the past couple of years, it is attracting a lot of people who definitely want their share in that $6.8 trillion that is projected to only continue to grow. Even with that said, and with the recognition of the economic interest in the wellness space, I don't think that the trend of wellness right now is inherently a bad thing. I do think that there is more positive than negative to the ease of accessibility with which wellness is now operating in. Wellness, especially like health and wellness over the past, let's say, couple of decades, was something that was mainly seen as something that you spoke about with your primary care physician. You maybe went to the doctor, you got their advice about something, maybe you changed your diet, maybe you didn't, maybe you got placed on a medication to help with symptoms. That was kind of the crux of health and wellness for the average person. You definitely had more fringe movements that were into alternative wellness and modalities years and years before they became trendy. But for the most part, the average person just trusted in the information that they were receiving from their primary care physician, went with their advice, or maybe they didn't, and that was pretty much the beginning and the end of their health and wellness consideration for themselves. But now, because health-related content is really at the forefront of our collective awareness and is definitely more into the forefront on social media and with branding, anyone now can come across a post or a resource while they're doom scrolling on TikTok or Instagram that could radically transform how they understand their health and even promote a change in behavior just by one post that they saw. So I do think that there is an overwhelming positive aspect to that, even though there definitely are some drawbacks that come with this ease of accessibility, or in other words, the profitability of wellness. when something starts to trend, there are usually micro trends that are a part of that macro trend. So if wellness itself is the macro, that's the umbrella that all of this content, all of these brands and services fall under, there are inevitably going to be smaller trends within that overarching one that tend to go viral, that tend to get a lot of attention. So for example, a couple of years ago when I was pretty consistent in the wellness space, one thing that I saw over and over again was nervous system regulation. Nervous system regulation definitely has had its moment. Perhaps it has passed, but back in like 2020, 2021, that was the conversation that was being had over and over and over again, seemingly by every single person in the wellness space that could talk about it was talking about it. There were interviews, there were podcasts, there were videos, there were books, there were newsletters, anything that you could possibly think of where information could be delivered to a person. It was about nervous system regulation. And again, this is not inherently a bad thing. I think there is more of a net positive for people having such ease of access to this type of information because, again, one post could radically change someone's education around nervous system regulation, could help them find practices, tools, and resources that can help them with regulating their nervous system. There is an overwhelming positive to this information being so prevalent. But at the same time, when you have hundreds of thousands of people talking about one particular topic in one particular way, for the most part, there can be a lot of nuance, additional information, and context, I think, that can go missing because everyone is simply trying to keep up with the trend. So in order to keep up with that trend, you have to talk about it in a very specific way, right? In order to increase your potential for virality, in order to increase your profitability with brands, there's typically a surface level way of talking about these things. And I think I definitely saw that happen with nervous system regulation. It became the topic that everyone was discussing, but at the same time, it almost got to a point where it felt like we were saying nothing meaningful anymore because we were just regurgitating the same information over and over again, just under a different brand or under a different podcast name. A few other examples that come to mind right now are contrast therapy. I think is definitely either still having its moment or had its moment within the past couple of years. So things like steaming, saunas, cold plunges, that whole routine definitely had its moment in the wellness/athletic/recovery space and was something that most people, I think, in the wellness space were interested in trying at least once, whether it was just the cold plunge, just the sauna session, or both of it together in contrast therapy. There was a lot of connection that was made there between contrast therapy and nervous system regulation. So you can kind of see how these trends stack on top of each other over time if you're really paying attention to them. But another one that also comes to mind is definitely running. I think a lot of people have noticed that running is and was having its moment between run clubs and people's Strava accounts going viral and brand deals that have come from people posting their running journeys. There's definitely been an influx of content around running. And again, I don't inherently think this is a bad thing. The more people that are moving their bodies and getting outside even or connecting with people through run clubs, the better. I think that that is an inherent net positive. But at the same time, again, we have to be conscientious of how these trends are spoken about in a generalized sense, how context tends to go missing when things become trendy, and also the impression that's left on us about whether we need to be participating in these trends or not in order to achieve like our optimal wellness. Micro trends like running, Pilates, contrast therapy, inner child healing was another big one, and nervous system regulation are the result of witnessing popularity. So if a creator an author, a writer, a podcaster, a doctor, whoever it may be, creates content, whether it be a book, a podcast, a Substack post, whatever it might be, around a specific topic, and that topic or that post happens to go viral, there are definitely, you can absolutely count on it, going to be people who are going to want to replicate that method of what they perceive to be success. So if something gains virality, if a lot of eyes get on it, if a lot of potential profit comes from that post, there are going to be people who want to step by step create that same exact post, podcast, book, etc., so that they can hopefully potentially tap into that same level of virality that the original person or group of people gained from their post. And I think this is like a natural part of human nature. Like, we see this concept even back in school, right? When there were certain things that were trending in school, whether it was like clothing or a TV show, an app, whatever it might be, if you see that a lot of people are using it and they seem to be gaining something from it, so like in the context of school, that's going to be social status, you may feel an inclination to also participate in that activity or be on that platform, because you also, somewhere inside of you, hope to experience that same level of increased social status. That same exact concept applies into the wellness space, even though we are adults and we are talking about something as individualized and meaningful as health and wellness. You are still definitely going to have those people who want to simply achieve what they perceive as success. And so every post, every piece of content that they create becomes a replication of what already exists. This is how trends come to be in the wellness space. And the reason why this is so bothersome to me is one that there's something so uncomfortable to me about the fact that wellness can be considered trendy. Like, something about that word just deeply does not resonate with me. But aside from like my personal gripe with that word, I think part of the reason why trends bother me so much also is because, as I've been saying throughout this podcast thus far, is that they can become generalizations for the topic that becomes trendy. In order to maintain profitability, marketability, to be attractive to general audiences, to be attractive to brands, when influencers or companies are talking about these topics that are going viral, there tends to be a surface level approach that is taken to them. So instead of diving deeper into the topic, exploring the nuance of the topic, they tend to stay on the surface because that's what's safest and can ensure the highest potential for profitability. If a topic is less controversially approached, you're less likely to rub someone the wrong way, you're less likely to ruffle feathers, and therefore the likelihood of you making money and being able to draw people into your platform or to your service or your business, whatever, definitely goes up. So even when there are topics that deserve that depth and deserve to be spoken about in a way that includes the complexities of the topic, again, the nuance of the topic, the particular context in which that topic can apply to a person's specific health and wellness history and their health and wellness goals, it tends to be neglected because it's not as favorable, it's not as profitable. And I think this over time can manifest into the audience of this health and wellness content feeling as though something is missing from it. Even though they are seeing the brand deals, they're seeing the posts, they're reading the Substack articles about how they can improve their sleep quality and can start meditating and start practicing yoga, or they can start changing their diet to be more holistic. Even though they're seeing all of this content, because it's spoken about in such a generalized one-size-fits-all way, it creates the space for that person who's on the receiving end of that content to feel like it's not deeply resonating with them in a way that can actually promote change in their life, because it starts to feel inaccessible. It starts to feel like when you have that sense that there's context missing or there's something missing from how you can apply that to your own life and your specific circumstances, that post that potentially could radically change someone's life just becomes another post that they see in the plethora of hundreds of others that are promoting the same exact thing and saying the same exact thing. And so I think as I return to creating content in the wellness space, I think it is imperative that I reopen my space here by speaking about some of the things that I've noticed over time, by sharing my thoughts around wellness content, the wellness industry, and some of the things that I personally have noticed are missing because of these trends and because no one really wants to talk about things that may or may not be controversial or rub someone the wrong way. So the three things that I want to focus on for the rest of this podcast are that wellness is personalized and individualized, that it's not an aesthetic, it doesn't look like anything, and that your pockets, your financial health should not be depleted because you're trying to keep up with what you think wellness looks like. So briefly going back to the concept of things going viral under the umbrella of wellness. So those micro trends that we were talking about. So again, running, Pilates, shadow work, inner child healing, nervous system regulation are the examples that we brought forth earlier. And again, we spoke about how when things become trendy, most people are just trying to replicate the method that they believe will bring them the most success or virality. So they're not trying to talk about more sensitive subjects. They're not really trying to dive into the context or the nuance. They just want to talk about the surface level aspect of these micro trends so that they can hop on the wave that is present and hopefully ride into more followers or more money. But what gets missing in this type of content that is so generalized and trying to appeal to the masses is that wellness and your health are incredibly personal to you. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, like most people would have an understanding of that, but unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of the times when health and wellness is spoken about, there are a lot of generalizations that are made, a lot of recommendations and advice that's given out that would hypothetically work for most people or for the average person, but bioindividuality is not taken into account. So essentially, the concept of bioindividuality is that everyone has a unique physiology, psychology, and biology. Who you are from a health perspective is determined by so many factors, from your genetics and your ancestral line to the health of your parents directly, to the health of your environment that you live in, to the health of your job and your work schedule, to the food that you have access to, the quality of the food that you have access to how loud or chaotic your environment is. Do you live in a more suburban area or do you live in the heart of the city? Do you have access to clean drinking water? Like, these are all individualized factors that can influence your health and wellness and your ability to choose health promoting behaviors. And that absolutely, for the most part, is going to get lost in the conversations that are happening around trending wellness topics because most people are going to avoid this issue or this realization because it involves talking about systemic things. It involves zooming out from the individualized approach to wellness that mainly focuses on what we ourselves can do to promote our health and wellness and starts looking at the larger picture of how our environment, our socioeconomic status, our state of political affairs, how the state of the world and our society at large are influencing our state of well-being. But I think it's imperative in order to achieve improvements in your health and wellness that your bioindividuality and your social determinants of health are taken into account. So we briefly talked about bioindividuality. Again, that is the understanding that you have a very unique physiology, biology, and psychology that is dependent on your specific genetics, your health history, your health goals, etc. And so in relation to that, the social determinants of health are a concept that I learned in my health coaching program that I think everyone should have access to knowing. And so you can definitely dive a little bit deeper into this if you would like to. I'll leave some links in the description of the podcast so that you can start kind of exploring in your own time your social determinants of health. But the basic understanding that's necessary for the rest of this podcast episode is that there are external factors that influence your ability to choose health promoting behaviors. So, for example, going back to do you have access to clean water? Do you have access to high quality food? If you live in an area of your town or of your city where the nearest grocery store is 45 minutes away, that can drastically influence your ability to choose organic or like fresh foods over fast food that may be 5 minutes from your house. So that's just an example of how an environmental factor can influence your health promotion. Or if you are raised in a culture that has a very specific way of eating, and if you were to divert from that way of eating, you may face ostracization or judgment. You may have to have some really uncomfortable conversations, or you may even be judged. That knowing that you may be ostracized for eating healthier or working out or whatever it might be could actually be a deterrent for you to choose that lifestyle change. So working out or eating better because you're afraid that you may lose your relationships and your connections in the process. So those are just two examples of how either your environment or your culture and relationships can influence your ability to choose health promoting behaviors. And so these things should absolutely be taken into consideration when we're consuming wellness content, because generally wellness content is not going to consider them for us. They are going to speak in a way that is for profitability, for marketability, or to simply follow the trend, or they're speaking about their specific story. And so it's important that we have the awareness of our social influences, of our health history, and of our unique health goals, so that when we're consuming this type of content, we're able to filter out what actually is resonant for us and makes sense for us, and leave what doesn't, so that we're not feeling pressured to fit a certain type of health and wellness in order to achieve optimal health and wellness. So as I said, I'll leave some resources in the description below so you can start exploring your specific social determinants of health, so that when you are consuming wellness content, you can do it with a little bit more intention and a little bit more awareness around what exactly applies to you and is practical for you and what isn't. The second reason why trends bother me a lot in the wellness space is that it starts to create this idea that wellness looks like something specific, that wellness has an aesthetic, whether it be having specific types of candles or drinking your matcha or your coffee out of very specific cups and like glass mugs, or whether it's being a part of a Pilates studio and posting pictures on the Reformer. Whatever it might be, the trends that happen can create this subconscious idea, this messaging that takes place, that in order to improve your health and wellness, you must look the part. And it creates this idea that wellness is this club that one has to earn their way into in order to fully experience and receive access to. And that is just not the truth. Health and wellness doesn't look like anything, and there's really truthfully no way to determine someone's state of well-being based off of an Instagram photo that they post. They may have set up their camera, post-workout or while they're meditating or whatever it might be, and it may give the impression that they are in a state of optimal health and wellness because of it, but truly you have no idea what is happening when that camera turns off, when they're not sitting in front of their meditation space. You have no idea internally or externally what's happening in their life or how they show up in the world on a day-to-day basis. So even though it may look like it, wellness doesn't have a certain aesthetic. There aren't any uniforms, there aren't any requirements in terms of devices or products for you to have. There aren't any clubs that you need to be a part of unless you really want to do that. Your health and wellness, going back to the bio-individuality, is going to look unique and feel unique to you. Wellness should be something that is experienced and felt more than it looks like anything. So also, just keep that in mind as you're consuming this type of content, because again, there's no prerequisite, there's no requirement in order for you to achieve health and wellness. And the third reason that trends bother me that I'm going to be talking about is that your pocket should not be hurting because you are trying to keep up with these wellness trends. This shit is not cheap. It's not. As someone in the health and wellness space, as a coach, as a yoga teacher, I acknowledge that health and wellness, especially if you are not going through insurance, like with your primary care physician, can be expensive. Alternative modalities can be expensive. For the most part, you are going to be paying them out of pocket because generally insurance does not cover alternative modalities. So there is an expense associated with the wellness industry, which is why it is projected to grow by 7.6% annually over the next 5 years. And even with that said, with that understanding, I'm not saying that you shouldn't invest your money in products, services, people, coaches, resources, whatever it might be that you genuinely see the value in and believe would be supportive for you along your journey. I'm not saying that at all. You yourself are the only one that can discern whether something is worth your investment or not. But what I am saying is that I have seen way too many videos of people buying 10 different pairs of running shoes at one time. I've seen people hoarding candles and skincare products and other self-care marketed products all in their counters and in their closets. I've seen people going out and buying Pilates outfits or yoga outfits or whatever it might be, and your pockets should not be suffering because you're trying to keep up with what you think wellness looks like. So going back to my second point, wellness doesn't look like anything. It's more of an experience that you have. It's a feeling that you have. And so if you find yourself scrolling or listening to podcasts and from that consumption of that content, you feel this urge to go out and buy a shit ton of stuff, I think one, you need to reevaluate the type of content that you're consuming because it may be triggering something in you that is not actually health promoting, even though it may be wellness marketed. And second, reevaluate your association with items and material things with you feeling better. This is a topic of conversation, consumerism within itself, that is spoken about quite often now because it has become such a problem I think that we generally are aware of. But in the health and wellness space specifically, there's something so especially nefarious about consumerism because your health and wellness, again, should not be depleting your pockets, nor should it be something that you feel like you have to chase materially in order to experience and achieve. If you want to go to a grocery store where things are a little bit more expensive because you trust that the products are organic and that they are highly caring about their ingredients, then that's one thing. But if you find yourself stacking and hoarding products and continuously buying the next expensive gadget or feeling like you need the next wearable tracker or some sort of expensive device in order to improve your life, just take a moment to pause before you press pay and sit with what value this item or service is actually going to bring into your life, whether you can achieve what you're hoping to find from it without it, And then if you still see the value, if you can't imagine how you achieve your goal without it, then maybe you press pay. But just bring more awareness to the fact that these companies, these brands, these influencers want you to spend money. That is the whole business model. That is why the wellness industry is growing, because people are spending money. So when you see a post promoting a product, or when you see a new brand, just keep in mind, even though they're using words like regulation and self-care and all of these other buzzwords like optimization, even though they're using these words that feel like they're meaningful and trying to get to the heart of health and wellness, keep in mind that money is always at the forefront of every single thing that they do for the most part. There are definitely some brands where the intention is not that, but generally speaking, the brands are here to make money, the influencers are here to make money. So even though I have gripes with all of these aspects of wellness being trendy, inevitably the wellness industry is going to continue to grow. You're going to keep seeing more content and podcasts and books and coaches and all of the things crop up. That is just an inevitability of where we are in the space right now. And I think it's just important that these things are considered when you are consuming this content, so that your online space, your wellness space, and your experience of health and wellness can be intentional and can be conscientious. So at the very least, maybe this podcast episode helps you feel just a little bit more connected to your truth, your personal truth, and less like you're riding the wave of influencers and brands and wearables and Pilates clubs and all of the things. So if you made it to the end of this podcast, thank you so much for tuning in and for listening. Feel free to follow me on Instagram and Substack if you would like to keep up with me. You can also visit my website down below for information about one-on-one health and wellness coaching and private yoga instruction. Again, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.